morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
Well, except for the last few stragglers, calving is about wrapped up in our country and lots of brandings coming up, and that's cowboy heaven for me. Just bring your horse, your rope, and your guitar, they say, and I'll be there. Well, this week, Baxter Black looks ahead to late summer, and this is something so many of us can identify with. The bull that won't come home.
Harold did his best to horseback to get the bull moving back toward the ranch, but no amount of hoorah and rope swinging, horse pushing, rock chucking, name calling, or heritage bashing could move the sullen bull.
Our rangeland news experts continue to try to analyze this cattle market.
Lower returns to cow-calf operators, which are being pressured by the lower feeder cattle prices.
And the legend Sonny Hancock has a classic piece of cowboy poetry.
All the patrons of the bar room, they jumped back and held their breath because to talk that way to Henry was the court of violent death.
And another legend, Rex Allen Jr. is back on the line from Nashville, and he'll talk about his dad and his pal, Roy Rogers Jr., better known as Dusty Rogers.
Dusty wore nothing but Roy Rogers underwear until he was 15.
On the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, using spurs without some discretion caused this guy a few bruises, and we'll examine in some detail how you should use your spurs and how necessary they are. Another classic song of the West, sung by Rex Jr., and he'll have the story behind this song that was recorded by his dad years ago. And this is Rex Jr.'s brand new version of that albino pink-eyed stallion.
In Arizona's desert lore, the legend goes about a horse, the champion of a lawless breed, the favored one, the devil's steed, who by some strange chance was free. That albino pink-eyed stallion, born of the devil in the lake of fire, bred with an introvert desire's eyes at night are blaze with a burning fire. At night in the canyon all alone, I've heard the devil call his own. It made my bloodstream freeze. But pleading for this wayward steed is all in vain indeed, for free he aims to be. That albino pink-eyed stallion, born of the devil in the lake of fire, bred with an introvert desire's eyes at night are ablaze with a burning fire. You drunks and gamblers laugh at me, you sweat for gold and spend it free with eyes too blind to see. You have no hope, you have no goal, you have no dreams to ease your soul, and yet you laugh at me. That albino pink-eyed stallion, born of the devil in the lake of fire, bred with an introvert desire's eyes at night are ablaze with a burning fire. Without a goal, no man is whole. Without a dream, there is no soul, and stagnant he will be. I'll sleep by day, I'll search by night, I'll not renunciate my fight till he belongs to me. That albino pink-eyed stallion, born of the devil in the lake of fire, bred with an introvert desire's eyes at night are ablaze with a burning fire. That albino pink-eyed stallion, born of the devil in the lake of fire, bred with an introvert desire's eyes at night are ablaze with a burning fire.
that's Rex Allen Jr., and he's on the line again today.
I just was surprised to see that Rhino Pink-Eyed Stallion, and gosh, I listened to your dad's version of that. I've got almost everything. No, nobody has everything your dad ever recorded, I'm sure. There was just such a huge volume of stuff. But I have got racks and racks of it on cassette and everything else.
Yeah.
But Albino Pink-Eyed Stallion, I didn't realize it was written by Marvin Rainwater.
Marvin Rainwater wrote that, absolutely. And
Gonna Find Me a Bluebird, his big hit.
Gonna find me a bluebird. Yeah.
And then he did that little whistle. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dad cut that, gosh, back in the 50s. There again, that was another one of those big sessions that he did. And, you know, I loved that song when I was a little kid. I used to put it on the turntable and walk around singing that albino pink-eyed stallion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But here's the irony of all of it. I have a soon-to-be 7-year-old granddaughter. And if anybody carries on the Allen tradition, it's going to be her. And Mary Fletcher's her name. And I played her albino pink-eyed stallion, and she goes around the house singing the same darn song.
Oh, my goodness. that is so neat. And that's going to be really something. You know, October the 7th at Rex Allen Days in Wilcox. I mean, that has been a tradition there from the time when your dad started it, probably in would it be the 50s? Maybe?
Yeah. Dad started it, I think it was 52.
Yeah.
But please, you know, I may be wrong, but first time I went was 54. And it's still going on, and even after I've stopped singing, I plan on going back there every year, especially in the year 2020, because that will be Dad's 100th birthday, and I know I'll be there for that. I'll be there until they can't roll me around anymore, you know.
There's more from Rex Allen Jr. and a new song from Lacey J. Dalton when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. The town of Wilcox, Arizona, in beautiful Cochise County, where the last of the silver screen cowboys, Rex Allen, was born and raised, has honored Rex since the early 1950s with Rex Allen Days. And Rex Allen Jr. will be doing his farewell appearance there this coming October. And Rex, I know a lot of folks from the North Country are planning to take that in October.
Right now, for your listeners up there, especially that come south for the snowbird season, if you're coming south to Arizona and decide you want to go to Rex Allen Days in October, come down early. You better call them now and get the tickets, because when I talked to the folks there yesterday, they only had 22 left.
Really? Oh, man.
Yeah, 22 of them. So
yeah, and this is still spring, so yeah, and Wilcox can be pretty.
It's spring for me. It's not for you.
No, not for a while. We got cows that are getting awful close to calving, and oh boy, I don't know how that's going to go. But that's going to be just a wonderful time. Johnny Western will be there. Do you know who some of the other folks are that'll be there?
I've heard a rumor that Lacey J. Dalton is coming in.
Oh, neat.
And I've heard another rumor that David Frizzell is coming in. And it may be that Leroy Van Dyke shows up, too. I don't know.
Yeah.
They really aren't telling me much about that stuff.
Oh, gosh. Oh, that'll be so special. Say, after the Ivan Dane's Country Music Picnic last August, I believe you and Lacey J. and several other high-profile celebrities were on some kind of was it a trail ride or something in Nevada?
After we finished the date there, we drove back down to Reno, Nevada, and did a fundraiser for Lacey J. Lacey J's big charity that she promotes is she's trying to save all of the wild horses down in that country. Yeah, especially in that Carson City area. They're all over. They're all over the place down there, and so we did a big show for them. Yeah. How's Ivan doing, by the way? I talked to him a few weeks ago.
Did you? Yeah, he was down to the NFR in December, of course, in Vegas. he called from his hotel room and said, "Hey, I got an extra bed in this room. Why don't you come down and hang out with me?"
He's talking to me about coming up and doing his thing again this year.
Oh, wouldn't that be terrific? Yeah.
Yeah, it would be great because there's some folks that are working on a documentary on my career, and they'd like to have me back up there and shoot some of that around Dane's Ranch up there.
Oh, gosh. Oh, that would be something to see. How do you decide what doesn't go into a documentary like that? Man, that could be...
Yeah, it should be interesting. We're just talking. I've already met with them once, and they are putting it all together now. They've actually already shot some stuff. So.
Well, I imagine there's probably some vintage footage around from television archives everywhere.
Stuff on me. You can go on YouTube and pull stuff on me that I'm embarrassed about. You know.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's talk more about growing up in the world of Western movies and your pal Roy Rogers Jr. after we hear a new song from Lazy J. Dalton, "The Last Wild Place."
Well, you come from California, you come from Kansas too. Some come down from Canada or maybe Timbuktu. Well, some of you have money, more of you have none. But you're all looking for something, every mother's son. Say you're feeling burned out, you could use a little space. Come on in, you restless heart, to the last wild place. Well, some of us are scared to live, some are scared to die. Some of us will tell the truth and more of us will lie. Well, some are born to fool around, some love only one. Some hearts have been broke so bad they cannot trust no one. And you say you're feeling burned out, you could use a little space. Welcome home, you restless heart, to the last wild place. Feel that wind that's softly blowing, the sun that's smiling on your face, that honey wine, it's always flowing here in the last wild place. We're so glad to see you, cousin. Come on, dance, it's no disgrace. Don't look back, it don't mean nothing here in the last wild place. There are those who live for power, those who live for fame, those who love the gold too much, do anything for gain. Well, the brave among us fight the fight, the coward always runs. And every soul has secrets, boys, every single one. Hey, say you're feeling burned out, you could use a little space. But it's right there in your restless heart, in the last wild place. We're so glad to see you, cousin. Let your hair down, it's no disgrace. Don't Don't look back, it don't mean nothing here in the last wild place. Hey, we're so glad to see you dancing. Come on, laugh, it's no disgrace. Don't look back, it don't mean nothing here in the last wild, here in the last wild, here in the last wild place.
As Lazy J. Dalton, and she did a fine job along with Rex Allen Jr. and David Frizzell and Dwayne Steele and many more last summer's Ivan Dane's Country Music Picnic, and Rex Jr. is still on the line.
I got to tell you, I love a lot of your Facebook posts, especially your Throwback Thursdays, where you'll put up a post from, or even a movie clip or something, and then some very informed comments about it. I just love that stuff.
Well, I do. Yeah, I do. I try to. And you know, that's one of the things I think that people, you know, probably don't know or understand. And Dusty Rogers, Roy Jr. and I have talked about it for every time we meet. We always end up talking about the same thing. You know, Dusty didn't have any. Dusty wore nothing but Roy Rogers underwear until he was 15.
I've heard that.
You know,
yeah.
and you know, slept on Roy Rogers' sheets. You know, that sort of stuff. Well, I fortunately didn't have to do that, but we talked about it. You know, back in the day when Dad was doing the films at Republic and stuff like that. See, I was only 5 or 6 years old, and 7, 8 even. And, you know, every weekend we would have, you know, some magazine in shooting pictures inside the house. And, you know, me, you know, watching Dad shine boots or loading this and doing that and so on and so forth. And that's kind of the way our weekends were when I was a kid growing up. We didn't have a lot of time. You know, Dad dressed us up like little cowboys and we'd go shoot pictures, you know, with some magazine someplace. And Dusty went through the same thing. You know, it's almost like, well, wait a minute. The only problem I've got, Hugh, is that, you know, some of the outfits that Dad had made for me and my brother Curtis, you know, I wish I still had them. I don't know what the heck happened to them, but some of them are, you know, they were made by Nudie.
Yeah.
All of mine and Dusty's stuff, they were all made by Nudie, but I have no idea whatever happened to them.
Oh, my goodness.
Mom probably sold them in a darn yard sale. You know?
Somebody else's kids are wearing them somewhere now. Maybe.
Somebody else's kids are wearing them, yeah.
Oh, wouldn't that be something?
Well, coming up, Baxter Black and the amazing story of Harold's lost bull when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at Harold's Lost Bull. When you go to B&W Hitch Factory for a visit, you won't need a passport or a Chinese translator. Why? Because their hitches are made right here in the heart of America. Sometimes that gets lost in the whir of our global economy, but lots of American businesses have survived the recession without cheapening their products or outsourcing jobs. Instead, they chose to stay at home, share the work, and spread the benefits. Learn more about what B&W stands for by going to AmericanMadeHitch.com. Go, for they call you shepherd from the hill. So spoke the English poet Matthew Arnold in 1853. I'm not sure how good a cowboy Matthew was, but he spoke wise words. When our livestock call, we go. Well, Matthew might have been looking over Harold's shoulder that late summer when one of his bulls didn't come home. True to the poem, Harold went to the hills looking. It's pretty rough country there on the western slope of the great Colorado Rockies, so it took a couple days to find the lost sheep, so to speak. The bull was brushed up in the bottom of the canyon, sick, batching, and on the fight. Harold did his best to horseback to get the bull moving back toward the ranch, but no amount of hoorah and rope swinging, horse pushing, rock chucking, name calling, or heritage bashing could move the sullen bull. Well, now sometimes shepherds have flashes of brilliance, and Harold had one. He knew he had to get the bull home where he could care for him properly, so he set a brush fire in the bottom of the canyon. Took all the matches he had, but it did start El Toro up the side. Harold returned the next day with his little propane torch and continued the brush burning, which kept the bull moving toward the top of the ridge, and from there the trail to the ranch would be easy to follow. And on the third morning, Harold found the bull on top of the ridge, and he worked the uncooperative beast down the trail and left him by a small stream. Next morning, he drove as close as he could get to the bull and packed him a couple flakes of hay. Over the next 2 weeks, Harold continued scattering hay and baiting the bull closer to home, and although the bull still looked poorly, he stayed on the fight. The last night, the bull was within 100 yards of the ranch. Harold scattered a nice trail of hay right into the corral and left the gate open. He slept the sleep of the satisfied shepherd. Tomorrow morning, he was confident the bull would be in the corral, and all he'd have to do is close the gate. Well, Matthew Arnold would have been proud. The poet had captured the essence of the shepherd's obligation to his flock. Harold found his bull in the corral the next morning and closed the gate. A fairy tale? No, not really. Those of us who live in the livestock business hear these stories often. Of course, it would not surprise us either to hear this happy ending had one small, dark cloud. Harold found his bull in the corral, all right, but he was dead as a mackerel.
This is Baxter Black
On Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan.
brought to you by B&W Turnover Bull.
Boy, we hear a lot these days about climate change. It used to be called global warming, but it's been adjusted a bit. But you can say one thing about the climate in the West, especially in the spring, it is always changing. We go from howling winds and blinding blizzards to bright sunshine and then back again. Just like Ian says in this beautiful song, Springtime in Alberta.
Should have seen it in your eyes. I could never read your eyes. So lost in love was I. They'd always take me by surprise. You were dreaming of the Southland. Ah, your love comes and goes. It's just like the weather, babe. Only heaven really knows. Just like springtime in Alberta. Warm sunny days in the skies are blue. Then without a warning, another winter storm comes raging through, and the mercury's falling. I'm left all alone. Springtime in Alberta chills me to the bone. I can see the storm clouds coming. Lord, they're dark across the sky. The same look that I've seen so many times when I've looked into your eyes. So I'll turn up my old collar, pull my hat way down low. All the wind's getting cold now, dropping down to near zero. Just like springtime in Alberta. Warm sunny days, endless skies are blue. Then without a warning, another winter storm comes raging through, and the mercury's falling. I'm left all alone. Springtime in Alberta chills me to the bone. Springtime in Alberta chills to the bone.
the rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
Top of page 1, it says a well-respected cattle industry analyst sees some dark clouds on the horizon, especially for cow-calf producers. And he's with Gary Crawford right now.
For the beef cattle sector,
We see a couple of, I wouldn't say storm clouds, but perhaps some darkness in the period ahead.
Agriculture Department Livestock Analyst Shale Shagam. Now, for radio purposes, we ought to have at least some, rumblings, not too bad, just rumblings of trouble. Shagam told USDA's Outlook Forum the other day that right now the cattle herd's still expanding. But of course, cattle people are painfully aware prices have come down pretty drastically, could come down again this year. So Shagam says darkness warning number 1.
First of all, we're looking at lower returns to cow-calf operators, which are being pressured by the lower feeder cattle prices.
Second rumbling, dryness developing in several cattle production areas. Shagam says all of this may slow the rate of herd expansion this year, but
we don't think it's going to be enough to convince producers to turn off the taps in terms of the expansion of the sector.
Private consultant and analyst John Nalifka agrees for 2017, but he says if prices keep falling,
next year is going to turn into a liquidation probably.
Probably, maybe. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Probably, maybe? All right. Waters are warming in the Pacific, and the chances of an El Nino developing as early as this spring are increasing, according to the U.S. National Weather Service's Climate Prediction Center. La Nina conditions have disappeared, and neutral conditions were present last month, and this neutral situation is most likely to continue at least through the spring, the center said in their latest forecast. However, it sees increasing chances of El Nino developing later this year, and they cited some possibility that it could arrive as soon as this spring. Well, that's now. The last El Nino, a warning of ocean surface temperatures in the eastern and central Pacific that typically occurs every few years, was strong, but it had ended by May 2016 to be replaced by a weak La Nina. The El Nino contributed to a drought in Indonesia and Malaysia that reduced palm oil production. Well, the Alberta and federal governments have each earmarked $10 million for a facility that will test technologies that convert carbon dioxide emissions into usable products. In the announcement, Federal Minister of Natural Resources Jim Carr and Alberta Minister of Economic Development and Trade Darren Bilos applauded the pending formation of the Alberta Carbon Conversion Technology Centre to be built in Calgary. In a news release, the government said the facility will be owned and operated by Inotech Alberta, which is a subsidiary of Alberta Innovates. Now, it's just this old cowboy's opinion, but I see a lot of evidence that Moore's Law continues to make our world better in so many ways. I talked about this a few years ago when I spoke at the Alberta Auctioneers Association conference in Lethbridge, and Moore's Law basically states that the processing power, the memory capacity, and the size and speed of bandwidth is doubling more than twice a year, while the cost is going down at the same rate. Now, a lot of our neighbors depend on solar power, and it has worked well, but now Stanford chemistry professor Honji Dai and doctoral candidate Michael Angeli recently discovered a low-cost solution for storing renewable energy during off hours. The high-performing non-flammable battery is made using urea, an ingredient that's already mass-produced for plant fertilizers. And the battery also contains electrodes derived from aluminum and graphite, which are both low-cost and abundant. And this new battery is 100 times cheaper and takes only 45 minutes to charge, compared to the performance of Dai's first rechargeable aluminum battery created in 2015. Now, due to this battery's low cost and high efficiency, he believes the battery takes us one step closer towards solar energy storage in every building and home. Why is that important? Well, battery technology and renewables are getting past the point where solar only works in daylight hours, and we'll need the need for cheap, high-performing, and efficient batteries to store energy for nighttime use, and it looks like maybe that's something that's coming. Saturday, May the 13th will be a great chance to visit with your neighbors that you haven't seen all winter. That's the big spring consignment machinery sale of the BC Livestock Co-op in Kamloops, where you'll have a chance to find lots of treasures, including that beautifully restored 1973 Massey Ferguson tractor, rebuilt from the ground up by Mark McMillan. Tires, brakes, engine, hydraulics, steering, new dash, instruments, new seat, a factory spec paint job, and new tires, and much more. And May the 6th, it's the Williams Lake Machinery Sale. Get all the details at bclivestock.bc.ca. And lots of interesting sales still coming up at the Innisfail Auction Market. Regular cattle sales every Wednesday and 2-horse sales a month, and you can get more information at innisfailauctionmarket.com. Well, look at that. We're down to the final item. A while back at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival, some of us were sitting around talking about how much we enjoy taking our songs to seniors' homes. And that can sometimes be interesting, and I was reminding them that I was at one a while back, and I finished up with Home on the Range. And an old fella stood up from his walker and he said, "Sing it again." So I did. And when I finished, he said, "Sing it again." And I said, "Again? I just did it twice." And he said, "Sing it again until you get it right." And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, a look at spurs and how they should be and should not be used. And we'll have more from Rex Allen Jr. when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Now, just ahead of the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, last week I said I'd have some news about these guys, and it is pretty neat.
Where would we be without the sons of the pioneers who gave us all those wonderful cowboy songs? There wouldn't be no cool water waiting way out there, no tumbling tumbleweeds drifting along. If it weren't for Leonard Sly, there wouldn't be Roy Rogers riding trigger across the silver screen. If it weren't for the harmonies provided by Tim Spencer, well, I can tell you're starting to see what I mean. Where would we be without Bob Nolan's mighty pen and the lyrics he put to song down through the years? I don't know how we'll get along when the day comes that they're gone. I can't imagine life without the sons of the pioneers. They'd sing and Roy would yodel those beautiful Western tunes, setting a standard for all Western bands. Lloyd Perryman, Tommy Doe, Still Warren, and all the others held the music of the West in solid hands. Where would we be without that Western trio sound that Roy and Tim and Bob brought to our ears? I don't know how we'll get along when the day comes that they're gone. I can't imagine life without the sons of the pioneers. I don't want a world without the sons of the pioneers. I'd say so long to the Red River Valley if there's no place on stage for the sons of the pioneers.
The amazing Red Hot Rhythm Rustlers and a wonderful song from Marvin Odell. And here's the scoop. The Sons of the Pioneers, as you'd probably know, started in 1934, still going strong today with an unbroken connection that goes right back to Roy and Bob and Tim. They will be doing a tour of Western Canada. They start June the 19th in Vancouver, and then they do Abbotsford, Kelowna, Oliver, Nelson, Vernon. They wind it up June the 28th in Kamloops, where I think I'll have the honor of introducing them on stage. And then they'll be in Edmonton and Red Deer in November, so stay tuned for more details.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
At Irvine Tack and Western Wear, you won't find this.
Hey, yo!
But you will find this.
Welcome to Irvin's. How can I help you?
You won't find this.
What size boots you wear there, boy? You got tiny feet.
But you will find this.
Absolutely, we have your size. In fact, I've got the perfect pair for you right here.
The one and only Irvine Tack and Western Wear, something for everyone. Cowboys and cowgirls to city folks too. It's Western Wear with a welcome twist. Off exit 305 on Highway 2 by Crossfield. Open 7 days a week.
Canada's largest Western store.
Well, a rider says he has a young horse that's been doing well, but the other day he decided to ride him with spurs, and that didn't go well. He tried to do things right, he thought. He held the spur in his hand and he poked him in the side with it, and he flinched a little bit, but that was all. But when he got on him with the spurs on his boots, things kind of went sideways. He poked him with the spurs, and the colt darn near bucked him off. His question: how can he get this colt to accept spurs without losing trust? Well, I'd like to quote the great horseman from Montana, John Ensign. John says, spurs can be razor blades in the hands of monkeys. I like that. Now, my spurs are always on this is me talking, my spurs are always on my boots, so I know where they are, and I kind of feel naked riding without them. But they have gotten me bucked off a time or two when I was a little bit too forceful. And I bet my good mare Cody remembers that. But there have been very few horses that I decided it was better to take off my spurs and ride them slick-heeled. Maybe you don't need to use spurs with this particular horse, but if you still want to, then keep the approach really soft. Horses are pretty forgiving, and with time and patience, they can get over things like the episode this guy had. I'd suggest riding him without spurs, but riding him a lot, really putting some miles and some hours on him, and with enough of this, he might be over his fear of what's on your heels, and if he is, then ride him with the spurs, but don't even touch them with them for a few rides, and then try applying just real light contact with just one at a time. Try maybe bending him and gently touch him with your inside spur and wait for his hindquarters to step over, and then take the pressure off and do the same thing on the other side. Be as polite as you can with your spurs and only use them as a very gentle suggestion for lateral movement. And good luck. Something our horses really enjoy and do well on is that daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration. You can find out more about that at hoffmanshorseration.com. And for Irvine Saddles and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western Wear store, that's the Horse Training File. Now, just before we get back to Rex Allen Jr., rodeo season's in full swing, and here's the great band Rodeo Wind and a legend of Canadian country music, Joyce Smith.
Snowflakes beat down on the window in the cold of winter's last storm, but here in the light of the cabin, she's happy and safe in his arms. She knows it won't last forever and worries with spring coming on. Those warm Chinook winds and the gypsy in him, with the green grass of spring he'll be gone. She sees the signs of his yearning. She knows the look in his eyes. It burns like a fever, and she knows he'll leave her come the rodeo wind without saying goodbye. He tells her this time it's over. He'll never stray from her side. He really believes when he tells her he's made his last rodeo ride. She can't count the times that she's heard it, and he'll never know of her pain. He won't see her cry, and she'll live a lie till the rodeo wind blows again. She sees the signs of his yearning. She knows the look in his eyes. It burns like a fever, and she knows he'll leave her. Come the rodeo wind without saying goodbye. It burns like a fever, and she knows he'll leave her. Come the rodeo wind without saying goodbye.
Joy Smith, and that's from a Royalty Records album produced and arranged by R. Harlan Smith, who is just down in the U.S. being inducted into another Country Music Hall of Fame, and well-deserved. Well, Rex Allen Jr. is still on the line, and Rex, we were just talking about how we still love watching those old Western movies.
I have 680 of the old Westerns down on DVD.
Wow.
All singing cowboy things in my storage room here at the house.
Holy.
And as you know, I have a YouTube channel, the Rex Allen Jr. YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I've got all of Dad's music that was in his films is all up there. And I've got Roy, and I've got some of Gene's, and I have kind of gotten off that for a while because I've been darn busy. But I'll get to it again and start adding some other stuff. You know, the Charles Surratt things, they had mainly the Sons of the Pioneers in them. He didn't sing, but the Pioneers.
Yeah, the Pioneers did, and
they were in every single movie he did.
And Ray Whitley, actually, I think, sung in some of those. And boy, there is an underrated, what a wonderful underrated talent. I can never figure out why he wasn't a huge star.
Kind of a forgotten guy.
Yeah.
A shame, that somebody that rode Back in the Saddle again,
But it's so great to see. I watched On the Trail of Robin Hood just before Christmas, sitting there in the clinic.
That's a great movie.
Oh, and the one wonderful scene where your dad and Roy ride together, and both Trigger and Coco are there in the same scene. I mean, now this is a rare treasure. And Trigger, and they cut the shot just after this happened, but Trigger, you can just see him. He lays his ears back and kind of bares his teeth at Coco, and Coco just gives him that look like, make my day, partner,
Make my day.
And then the scene was cut, but I would like to see what happened after that.
Well, I tell you what, of course, Roy had, there were half a dozen or more Triggers. Now, Dad never had that with Coco. Coco, because of his unusual color and stuff like that, Coco did everything. He did all the run-in shots, all the stunt shots, and all the close-ups, too. Kind of like somebody says about Champion with Gene Autry. They say, love Champion, and I look at him and say, which one?
Yeah, there's 7 different ones.
What do you mean, which one? I said, well, there were 17 of them.
Yeah, and your dad told me one time, and I managed he told a lot of people that the horse I rode in the movies is the same one I showed up with at every rodeo in the country. It's the same horse.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah, and Cheryl Rogers actually told me one time, and I assume it's probably the truth, is that Trigger was actually, the original Trigger was actually a gelding. He was not a stallion.
That's right. That's exactly correct.
We could talk forever about this stuff, and I'm so glad you called this morning. It's just great to
thank you.
Kind of reminisce.
I talk to you, and I miss seeing you.
Yeah.
Maybe if I get back up there for Alvin's deal.
I'm darn sure we're going to be there, and that would be terrific.
Well, you're always there.
Yeah, well, I have been. Not as many as some people, but I guess we've been to the last dozen or more anyway. But so much for doing this.
I'll tell you something, Hugh, that's really interesting. And I've shipped the album out to people like you and everybody in the United States that plays Western music, and they're already starting to play it, like you.
Well, it's like I said, just great talking to you, Rex, and best of the luck, and we'll see you down the trail somewhere real soon, I'm sure.
You better believe it. Thanks, Hugh. Good to talk to you.
Coming up, Rex has our classic Song of the West, and we have a poem from the much-loved late Sonny Hancock when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West for this week's classic Song of the West. We're not going back that far, to about 1947 when the Sons of the Pioneers recorded this beautiful song written by Vaughn Horton. It had a something that a lot of recording artists recognized, and it was done by lots of them, including Rex Allen Sr. in 1948, later by Jim Reeves, Hank Snow, Freddie Fender, Marty Robbins, Wiley Gustafson. And Vaughn Horton was actually a songwriter from Pennsylvania and a member of a group known as the Pine Toppers. He was a good steel guitar player. Some of the songs he wrote you might recognize: Mockingbird Hill, huge hit for Patti Page, Mule Skinner Blues, Sugarfoot Rag, and many more. And this one was a big hit for Rex Allen Jr., stayed on the charts for many months in 1976. Teardrops in My Heart.
You'll never know I cried when I found out you lied, but I'm just riding, hiding teardrops in my heart. A cowboy can't reveal a broken heart until he's all alone, someplace unknown, to play the part. Though I'm pretending that I don't love you, to be with you, my darling, is my prayer. But way down deep inside, I can't give up my pride, so I'll keep riding, hiding teardrops in my heart.
Oh, a lot of miles made around the dance floor to that one. A big hit for Rex Allen Jr., Teardrops in My Heart. Well, you know, the second week in August in Paisley, Oregon, they hold the Sonny Hancock Leon Flick Memorial Cowboy Poetry Show. And this is the late Sonny Hancock.
It's just an old classic poem I thought I'd throw in because I kind of like it. It's called Buckskin Joe. It was a calm and peaceful evening in a camp called Buckskin Joe, and the whiskey was a-rollin' with a gentle, even flow. The gamblers was a-backing up their judgment with their wealth when in walked this little stranger that had come west for his health. Now, he was a peaceful little feller, though he seemed a mite unstrung, because just before he'd come out west, he'd parted with one lung. At a table in the corner sat a man named Henry Bean, and a tougher, meaner killer Buckskin Joe had never seen. Henry'd been at play all evening, and it seems he could but lose because he'd just now parted company with his final stack of blues. Henry got up from the table, throwed his hat down on the floor when he spied that little stranger that had just walked in the door. He said, "It's no wonder I've been losing, and I have here all this night, with that shadow of a man standing there twixt me and the light." Then he walked up to the stranger. He said, "You don't know who I am." "No," the little stranger said, "I guess I don't, and I sure don't give a damn." Well, all the patrons of the bar room, they jumped back and held their breath, because to talk that way to Henry was to court a violent death. He said, "I run the lions to their lairs, with bobcats I do play. I've never seen a grizzly bear could scare me to this day. No centipede, no scorpion could flay this tough old hide, and rattlesnakes have bit me and then crawled away and died. I'll tell you, little stranger, I'll grant you one last request. How do you want your corpse sent home, parcel post or by express?" Well, the little stranger stood there like he didn't really care, and he picked up the 5 of diamonds that by chance was lying there. He walked back through the bar room and he pinned it on the door, and then he stepped off 40 paces and he drawed a 44. And every shot he got a spot. He hit 'em, don't you know, because he'd been a fancy pistol shot in a circus long ago. And then he turned to Henry, and in a voice of cool command, he said, "I believe I got one left in here if you'd care to call my hand." Old Henry's knees together knocked, and his voice shook as he spoke. He said, "Them story about that there rattlesnake, I just told that for a joke." But for many years thereafter, around the camp he hung, just a peaceful little stranger that only had one lung.
Well, thank you so much for making the ride this week. I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. And thanks again to our great support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. Find out all about them at meadowsprings.com. And if you're looking for tractor parts, well, Mark's the guy that can help you at bctractorparts.com. And there's great reading in every issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine, and you can order it online at cowboycountrymagazine.com or call 1-800-943-7336. And for our U.S. listeners, remind you once again that Cowboy Country Television is now seen on RFD TV. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.